Indeed. Yeah. And make sure that, oh, make sure everything's here, because I'm sure this is the, I need to make sure, because I keep the well behind that. This is your thing. I need to make sure behind Kevin's picture, so I know what it is. Make sure this is, that's the one. I forget what the lawyer's called. I forgot what the lawyer was called. Aye, but if I lost this, I keep it behind Kevin's picture because I never move that. So I keep it behind the big one. Well, it's not so much. It's fine. This one is, that's those custom made decals. I keep it behind this, the big one. I hide it behind the card face funeral. That's what that is, isn't it? Hello and welcome to Live with Rex, episode 119, where I briefly forgot I'm streaming. But here we are. Got a few things we need to sort. That's most of what this stream is going to be. We're still going to try and get a start on the shelves now that I kind of have the whole Lego thing figured out. Went live a couple minutes later than planned, but hey, that's something that happens sometimes. I'm going to quickly put some shoes on, so I'll have to put something outside at some point in the stream, but hello and welcome. How's everyone doing? There we go. But essentially, this stream, we're going to continue organising things. Might stream a bit late. That's always an option. I did charge my phone up quite a bit. I'm looking to at least get an hour minimum stream. I am going to quickly get rid of this baggage, this junk that I've been meaning to get rid of, give myself some more space. But last night, I got a good bit of stuff done. I'm looking to continue that success. I'm also going to be looking for a parts bag that I may have to continue that stand. So if that project can keep going even just a little bit, I'm satisfied. say something. No having the gate up makes the house feel a wee bit bigger. See that gate? It makes the house feel more open. Nicer like that. No, yeah, I'll try again soon. Alright, I'm back. Just sorting some things out. I've got some comments. Hello, 501st. 501st stop. I tried reading. I'm just very dyslexic. But hey, welcome to the stream, man. But yeah, the goal is to try and get some organization on the shelf. Maybe start fixing some of the broken sets. That's a maybe. Just be organizing, getting some things done. In last night's stream, I perfected my gaming storage, which is great. Some of you guys may know I'm what you would call a retro gamer. Because I game on systems that are over 20 years old, and now I feel old. But yeah, welcome. Yeah, I do. It's fair though, right? I remember gaming on the Xbox 360 years ago, and a lot of people's gamer tags were done that way. Like, you know, one word rather than splitting part of the words up. Right. So we're gonna get started in on this. It's not too much now that we need to get done. We did do so because last night we did do so much that was needing done. I was able just to get a lot of it away, but my collection is kind of in two places now. So got the main. No, apparently that's my head. Got the main shelf here working on. We've started to get it all looking nice along this way, which is all looking great. We've got this bit over here, which is like absolute chaos. But I know what's going to happen here, so we're not going to be touching this for a bit. The main focus is this shelf, because I keep picking the wrong way to do that. That's not great. But you understand where we're going with this. Right, so first thing I'm going to do is put this. I've got this set here. This is the Temple Escape from Lego Indiana Jones. This is the 2008 set. It did suffer a bit. We're not going to fix this one right away. This is a set I don't mind waiting to fix. I will have to check I've got all the components. But we're going to start by getting this sorted. My makeshift gaming chair I will move. I can fold that up at any time, to be fair. I might just do that. So this is it's a cool set. Like, I've got a lot of love for that original Lego Indiana Jones wave. So I'll be sorting that set out soon enough. Hey there, Potato God. Just moving some stuff about. You know, there you go. That's the other section to the set. Which again is just gonna have to go up here because I don't really have this. I'll have to grab that. This section of shelving that you guys are sitting on where I keep the video games and stuff is not in its finished complete state, so it is going to look like that for a bit, but that's fine. I'm kind of accepting of that, so it's not the biggest problem in the world, so that's cool. Other things that we've got to do, we'll pick up that part there. There we go. So that's a tin. Like I was like, I can't believe this way. Clean it up, but apparently it's just rusted over the last years. This is a Star Wars 40th anniversary tin that I got, well, like 9 years ago now. It's full of just trading cards and stuff. So we got to organize that to be somewhere. I know exactly where that's going. It's going up here. And there it will probably sit for the next decade. Let's see what else we got. We've got these are it's a little clock thing that you can plug in. There's a wire. Just to give an example. Oh, I forgot. This requires a special wire, but essentially it just lights up like a clock. Yeah, right. I'm going to throw this up here as well. A good chunk of this is still to improve. That is, I used to use it for minifigures, to be fair. Granted, we are going back a long time ago. Probably when I first got that tin. I remember, like, what's crazy? The Star Wars 40th anniversary was crazy hyped. And it's weird to think that that is now, next year's the 50th. Yeah. That is nuts. 1 second, I'm trying to fix this thing with this thing the table's doing. I swear to God, right? Lego better pull out all the stops next year for the anniversary. I'm curious to know what they're going to do, and I'm really hoping they're not going to do the obvious one. So next year, right, I think we all expect a UCS set, right? Like a good UCS set for 50 years. It's going to have to be a New Hope based UCS set. And so they've already got an X-Wing available. They've got, you know, they've got the X-Wing. They're going to retire the Falcon unless they're bringing that back out immediately. Like, for all I know, for all we know, right? Here's the 3 options that I've come up with in my head that's going to happen. Right? Lego are going to fumble it because they like to do that. The second option is, like, they bring the UCS Falcon that they've got out right now, they retire it and bring it back out with a few small changes and figures based off A New Hope, like that UCS Falcon had in 2007. My other option that I think they're going to do is, I'm hoping that they don't do this. UCS TIE Fighter. I think... Like, I'm really hoping they think outside the box. Like, I want a UCS Tantive. I want that to come back. As far as, like, old Lego Star Wars sets I'd like to see, that's top of the list. I have the Tantive from 2009, which, don't get me wrong, it's a cool set. You know, that was for the 10th anniversary of Lego Star Wars. It's one of my favourite sets they've done, but I do want to see something substantial. I'm going to get a drink and then we'll continue. Let's just say I've got high expectations for 2027. Alright, I'm back. My other suggestion, right, would be build something from A New Hope that you haven't built yet. I wonder how easy it would be to find a thing from A New Hope that would be worth doing that they haven't. Nebulon B frigate and play scale might be difficult. Like, how do you structure that to stay up? But was that in A New Hope? See, I'm thinking they would have to do a New Hope set. But it's trying to figure out what have they not done. Because I feel for the 50th anniversary, right? I mean, I don't recall it being... The Nebulon B frigate is most famous for appearing at the very end of Empire Strikes Back. Like for that brief scene with the Falcons attached to it and, you know, Luke's getting his hand. That's where that's most famous from. Again, I could be incorrect about that. You know, I'm on to accept that I could be. I'm great. How are you? Like, what could you do from A New Hope, even like outside of UCS as well, that you haven't already done? Because I'm going in my head thinking iconic scenes, but I can also name a set for like 99% of them. Granted, you could just do your basic, your Y-Wing, X-Wing, and TIE Fighters play sets. Right, I'm willing to accept, right, that we're going to get stuff we've already had at least once, but I'm really hoping that just for once we can have something new. But then again, you have to remember that Lego have, well, that's true. But do we get enough scenes in that for it to justify being a Lego set? Could be the argument there. Like, technically we have had a room from it. We had the Holmes Lars, we had the kitchen with Aunt Beru, and that was the, what's the word I'm looking for? That was what you got if you spent a certain amount of money, or, no, that was the, like, gift with purchase for the Luke's Landspeeder, the UCS one. That's what that was for. This could make an interesting video, like, outside of just talking about it on live stream. Like, what could you have for the 50th anniversary? You'd have to do something really good, though. You know, like, something that we wouldn't expect. Yo, I've got it. I've figured it out. I know what they could do. I've just had the idea right there. I know what we could have. I know what they could do. Unless we get one this year, which people seem to be convinced we might be, right? I'm thinking UCS Darth Vader's TIE Fighter. You want to think a UCS set that would work from that movie that's not been done for a long time. The last one we got was 2006, so it would make sense. No, it's been 20 years since the last UCS Vader's TIE. If I was at Lego, that would be the main thing. That would be the one that I'd be trying to bring back. Like, without a doubt. That just makes sense that you'd have that one come back. You know, unless someone else thinks different. What do you think, 501st? That's what I would do. I'd have the return of the Vader's TIE. These are some Star Wars Legends books. I will put them there temporarily. So what else we got here? We got the box for 2012 Geonosis Cannon. Got to put that somewhere until I deal with it properly. Like, a UCS TIE Fighter is, if I was working at Lego, that's what I would be saying. Just based on the time argument, it's been asked for about a dozen times. But the argument I see people making against it is, well, we won't get any special figures. That's right, you probably will not get a special Vader. It will probably be the regular Vader. I don't know, that it's like an endless amount of ideas, like, if you really thought about it. But let's see, I'm just really hoping it's not a UCS standard TIE. Just because that's been done. That got done when? 2014, 2015? Organising something up here, but I'm just really hoping that they pick something cool. But then again, look, the UCS Falcon being re-released with A New Hope figures and some slight updates. Nah, that wouldn't happen. I feel like that's been done. And it was done not that long ago. A UCS TIE Bomber would be cool, but I'm like strictly trying to keep... Like, I'm strictly trying to keep my head in A New Hope. The TIE Bomber would be cool. I am struggling to come up with ideas. Lego, when it comes to the original trilogy, have very well covered most of it. You know, without fail. But, you know, that is a good thing, obviously. Just, not the purposes of this debate. I'd like Yavin 4 done again. But not the way that they did it in 2023. I want it done properly. I want Master Builder Series very big Yavin 4. They could do... one I would support. A reissue or a redo of the UCS Y-Wing. The Y-Wing we've not had for a while. Right. I gotta put these somewhere safe. They'll be going back on this shelf soon anyway. Put them up there. Take care, so. There we go. 25 minutes in, I feel like I'm actually getting somewhere of what I wanted to do. That is brilliant. Is that the charger that I use all the time? No. Right, that's that sorted. Right. So I've got an idea on I do need to find a place for this. This was an investment set that I'm not quite done with, but yeah, I've got to deal with that. So I do need to check the value on that because that was bought as an investment piece. Well, I want to see what this person said. The one that I would be the most sold on is Vader's tie or a Y-Wing. Those would be the two that I'd be majorly sold on happening. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take things off the shelf, right? And we're going to arrange it by movie. Yes, some of the sets are falling apart and need put back together. I've not had the time to do that. That's true. But even if it's broken, I will put it on the shelf it should be on, and then I can go about it throughout my week or the next few days, just organising it on these streams and see what we can do. You know what? Just on the name, I'm Rex. Yeah, I already know who that is. I've not got round to unstacking them, if that's what you mean. Okay. On your door. Well, that'll make it too hard for you. That can go through a gate. You have to lift that over a gate every time. I heard you talking, so I got up. How's that under your bed? It's underneath your bed. There's not that many ducks. How is it? Ah, the booster thing. All right. Yeah. Yeah. I'll plug all that in. It's no plugged in. That was under your bed. No, you look tired. You didn't look right, no. Because they were pricking your finger on you. They taking blood out. I noticed them there, they were taking blood out your hand. Bad. Don't know. At least you're home though. I hope they keep you in a lot longer. I didn't know you had that till I took the door off. Your dog. Anyway, that's what they look like to me anyway. It does. You probably have seen it in a while. See, I put you the better with the door off. So you're never playing. Maybe like don't put any more paper up. I think that a nice colour. I'll wait till you're better though. All the mold was gone. But it was saying that it's all behind it was gone. So it was gone right up the wall. And I saw it, I just decided to rip it all out till the paper on it. Holes. I don't think we'll get a lot of money from it. Anyway, we have to wait. That's probably all they'll get. I looked at some of the houses and other bits. That's a lot. 50 grand a good thing. A lot of them sell for 30. When here? See if you look at the... Oh, this is a big one. This is considered a big one. The only ones I saw that had more than 2 bedrooms had extensions in them. I was speaking to John and he had a look, a couple of his neighbours, what their houses valued, and he stayed in one of these. And he says the highest his neighbours got was £25,000. There were a couple of these for sale next to him. And he said 25 grand is what they're going for. Apparently these houses are not worth a lot. You can buy a brand new one for quite cheap. Most people prefer to buy them new. I had a look at what a new one costs. You can get a new one for 38,000. For a new one, they're I know what for. It depends on who's making them and that. Well, most people are just, alright, well, they're built like, if you think the damn computing plan, they say that after 20 years they'll have to pull down the new houses because all the pictures will be what? I know what the new ones. Many kids do not type that in on the internet. That you want a cage for your foot. I think something worse would pop up. Are you sure you didn't do that to get more tip money? And you should phone up. Oh, I'm going to apply for that. And I'm going to do it now because you've got a purple foot and you can't. I'm going to apply for that. Well, we'll check you and see that you've got a purple foot. So somebody has to help you. And if you come in, just tell them I'll help you. Just lie to them. But instead of coming in, they're handy. Because you're allowed to claim that while you work. Either Claire or Claire probably earns more money than I do. I don't earn that much. Aye, I don't have anything. I tried it. That'll be a well-paying job. Maybe they could get me a nice. I've got a, in all fairness, I've got a credit card that was a really good one. I've got a credit card with a very high limit on it. I'm not going to use it. But I wanted to see if they would. I wanted to see if they would get me one. So I was trying to make my credit score. Capital One. They gave me about £900. And they went, and I spoke to them over the phone, like, you've got a very good credit score. We trust you. And it made my credit score go up. So it was 800. You get me a credit card went up to 870 what my score is. And I've been paying back the whole. Aye, how much loan do you think that would take? I don't think it's the higher miles. Most cars older are better than 100,000. They went round the clock. You've got cars that are 5 years old that have went round the clock. So why would you bother? They say, by the way, I haven't looked in it. You can buy this kit for about £300, right? And it helps, and it changes. It's something you stick on a manual car to make it automatic. It's called a flappy paddle gearbox. And you see, your steering wheel. You've got buttons for your hands at your steering wheel to change gears. I'll send you a wee video explaining what it is. All right, you're not going to drive for a while.
Yeah, I know, but I got these things that you put into the use that for a Volvo. You probably do something interesting. I thought it technically saying
Yeah,
it makes it that it's up higher. But it
They
isn't.
say that they're not very safe in crashes.
Because it means that just looking for trying to get it out.
I wouldn't use them. There's a thing I was watching a while ago, and it was Renault Top Gear, and they're testing cheap things you can buy for your car. And one of them was the little things that extend the clutch. See a crash, they don't protect you, they just come out. So if you crash with that, it would just, your seatbelt would come off, would go through the window. So maybe don't buy things like that. I'm going to go through and lie down again. Shout me if you need me. I've locked the door in there. When I come back the other day, we had piss everywhere. I cleaned it, but I had the spray bottle and all that, and I cleaned it up, but there's probably piss somewhere I've not found it. You know what they're like.
I know it's the bathroom in the door.
That would have been him the other night. He didn't know what he was doing. He just got off my bed and goes out.
You know where he set this on, but
Sorry about the delay. I am back. Right. One second, I'm going to quickly try and answer text. Yeah, sorry.
that white thing,
It's already outside.
is it?
There's no space in it for the house. We'll have to get a new bathroom door.
I noticed
It's rotten. See, you close it, it's coming apart at the
I
bottom.
noticed that in the bottom.
I was doing the toilet the other day, and the cat pushed the door open because she's a little shit. So I went to close the door, and you could see it lifting and separating.
The tree, it's just that little tree.
It's the one thing I've noticed. He doesn't use it that much. Yeah. So here's the game plan, right? I'm going to show you how this is going to work. Right, hey Scooter, I've got an idea, right? So here's how we're going to do this. So obviously this shelf up here belongs to the Superstar Destroyer. That's a given. That stays there. Cool. Return of the Jedi, Empire, A New Hope, Revenge of the Sith, Attack of the Clones, and the Phantom Menace, right? That's the way we're going to do this. So, say I'm putting all the Return of the Jedi stuff there, and we're putting it in the Battle of Endor, which is broken. It's still going to sit there. I just want everything on its correct shelf, and then what we'll do is tomorrow's stream we'll make sure Return of the Jedi is all kitted out, we fix the Battle of Endor, and we'll just go down over the next couple streams. So that's how we're going to play it. So, I'm going to take a drink, and we're going to get started by removing things from the shelf to make this possible. This should go quite well, to be fair. I don't see us having too much problems with this. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at with this. It's been over a week. We're not far off 2 weeks since I've done all this, but progress.
Guys, fair warning. Every third video game console you release is going to be a failure. Be careful out there. This is an interesting little thing that's just happened throughout video game history. And there's no telling why.
That's the cup full of screws.
Back in every single situation. But pretty much all of the big console manufacturers, experience.
We're going to start putting these figures in a bag just so that they're not all over the place. Hey again.
Consoles they release, that's a console that's kind of plagued by a bunch of little problems. I wouldn't say any of these third consoles are inherently massive flops. Some of them may have been, some of them may have had trouble selling for a bit, and then some of them may have turned out okay in the end. But overall, every third console, Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, hell, even Sega released.
But how's everyone's... Well, today's what? Wednesday?
Let's start with Nintendo.
Yeah.
First console is the NES, second console is the Super Nintendo, and third console is the N64. And the N64 actually kind of broke Nintendo's winning streak there. You know, NES,
Nice.
SNES won
It's not
their
too bad.
generations. N64, yes, a lot to decipher from this metric. The Nintendo 64 did okay,
Yeah.
all things considered. You know, plenty of consoles did far worse than the N64, but it was definitely pretty jarring to go from NES and SNES, where Nintendo was.
So that's a non-Star Wars set. That's going over this way.
Literally an unprecedented number of consoles sold with the PS1 compared to 32 million units sold with the N64. So what hurt the N64 that badly? Well, you can kind of point to a couple of bad decisions Nintendo made with this thing. Firstly, this thing came out like 2 years after the PS1 did, and there were a fair amount of
Got the
delays
Palpatine shuttle there.
They kept typing this thing up in Nintendo
So my
Power
bag.
magazine, and it just wouldn't come out for years. You know, they had to keep on putting out stuff on the Super Nintendo, the Game Boy. Hell,
Nice. What set did you build?
Virtual Boy out to market just to put something out on store shelves in 1995. This thing took forever to release, but when it finally did, it launched alongside one of the greatest, most innovative games of all time, and Mario 64. Okay, that's great. What's
It's a
next?
Colmore set, so it can come over this way.
Had like a ton of software droughts. Like not a lot of games were coming out for it consistently. And at the end of it all, the N64 only had about 300 or so games released for it, which, you know, I mean,
Oh, the map's becoming visible again.
compare that to the amount of games on PS1. And this lack of software was primarily because the N64.
But yes, short production's going up again. The X-Wing, nice. I'm planning to go full steam ahead the way that we were for the longest while. Things did stop for about a week, or on and off for about a week. I'm putting an end to that.
Especially on like something like a Sega Dreamcast. I mean, you can just burn games onto a standard CDR and boom, you're golden. But N64 cartridges were entirely proprietary, and you know, you had the extra bonus of like, hey, not a lot of loading time. But obviously Nintendo knew the benefits of using CDs for video games at the time. I mean, they were planning on doing the CD add-on for the Super Nintendo, the SNES CD. You know, they were planning on working on that with Sony, and you know, that eventually turned into the PlayStation. No, they decided to go the way of cartridges on the N64, and I think this right
So
here,
I will be filming a short after this.
I mean, this was a problem Nintendo was dealing with till the day the N64 died. And I think they went with them because of arrogance. Nintendo didn't think anybody would leave them. I think they thought, hey, we're Nintendo. We're the kings of video games. Everybody's going to want to make games for the N64. So it doesn't matter if the cartridges cost more to produce and you can't fit as much onto these things. We're Nintendo and everybody...
One sec, I'm quickly checking something here.
Oh, wow. Where did everybody go? Well, over to Sony and even Sega with the Sega.
I'm removing some games that I have put in with my PlayStation stuff because I need to make shorts on these.
It had the most games, and pretty much all the third-party companies that made legendary games on the Super Nintendo, pretty much all the sequels to those games were on PlayStation. If you were a Mega Man fan on Super Nintendo, you needed to get a PlayStation. If you were a fan of Castlevania, you needed to get a PlayStation.
I bought a lot of video games yesterday.
You needed a PlayStation. And that's not even mentioning all the legendary series that started on the PS1. I mean, you have Resident Evil.
You'd sell what unless they're nostalgic?
The PS1, but it's, you know, the PS1 was where it really started gaining traction, especially here in North America. Tomb Raider. And then you also had all of the PlayStation exclusive Sony published games, stuff like Crash Bandicoot, Fire the Dragon, Gran Turismo.
Nah, I'm a collector of retro games as well.
Metal. And then you had all these games on PlayStation just running better than they did on N64. N64 definitely had some strengths compared to PS1, but for the most part, I find that a lot of the multi-platform games on both consoles, the PS1 version oftentimes felt less like muddy. You often had full motion video cutscenes, better music, more content. Now the N64 did get some massive third-party games.
Hold on, I'm just searching for something in my games.
But this is often kind of seen as like a miracle port, something where it's just like, wow, they fit this thing on such a small cartridge. This game that
I did as a kid. It was something I was interested in.
This is cool. This is a solid version of Resident Evil 2. But it's more of a novelty these days. It's kind of just cool to look back at.
But I'm for Battlefield.
Why the N64 was annoying for these.
I make shorts based on my recent video game pickups. So that's something I'm looking forward to put that game.
This isn't to say the N64 is a bad console. Genuinely some of the most legendary.
Yep, you can see them. So I went out yesterday and I picked up a whole bunch of retro games that I've been wanting to play. I can pause this because I know like how cheap to you would sell them, but to me it's like I love old consoles and playing them. So yesterday I'm gonna make a short on these. I picked up Battlefield 3 for the Xbox 360. I picked up Project Gotham Racing for the 360. That's a good set. Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb for the original Xbox. Time Splitters 2 for the original Xbox. Medal of Honor Frontline for the Xbox. ESPN NHL 2K5 for the original Xbox. Halo, and this is the Steelbook edition for the second Halo game. And for the PlayStation 2, I had to get a new copy of this, but Lego Star Wars, a video game. And Star Wars Bombad Racing. So that's gonna, I'll make a couple different shorts, like a different short for each console that's there. But yeah, that's coming after this.
Kind of considered one of the legendary kings of local multiplayer. Like some of the best multiplayer games of all time were on the N64, or at least like, you know, the most legendary, like Mario Kart 64, Mario Party, GoldenEye. I think what I love the most about the N64 is the genuine feel when you jump into one of its best titles. Something like popping in Mario 64 on the cartridge, just popping that in an N64.
There we go. Right, so we've got the Return of the Jedi shelf starting to go the way it should be. So I'm going to start to put these parts of the Battle of Endor up here.
Is such a cozy console when it comes to, like, let's say 30 of its best games. I don't think the N64 library is bad, and a lot of these complaints.
That's the box to the Back to the DeLorean. I got this up from that.
Kind of the era of gaming at the time. This is kind of the teenage.
That's one way to do it.
3D gaming, because really, I mean, this was the first generation where 3D games were a standard. So a lot of developers were still getting their feet wet. So you have a lot of games that are fully in 3D, but they just feel off. And I don't think it's until the next generation with the GameCube, PS2, etc., where things start to feel a lot more refined.
Boba Fett would go up there as well. As with this.
Library is just kind of like whatever. You got a good handful of bad games, but for the most part, it's just a lot of like kind of mediocre, just whatever titles. But I'd say the N64 has like 30-something games or so that are just, bar none, amazing titles.
My dream set at this point.
Today, but like you cannot deny their legacy and just how important they are.
That question's becoming harder and harder to answer because I keep buying them.
Gremlin, just piece of shit. But I often see more people talking about the N64 and just reminiscing about that compared to the PS2.
2010 UCS Imperial Shuttle.
Fans are more likely to do that, and also because I think as well as the PS1 did, the fact that it appealed to way more people kind of means that even though it sold like super well, I think you put two PS1 owners together in a room and they probably don't have a ton in common. One guy might have been just all about sports games and one guy might have been all about RPGs. Because with two N64 owners in a room, they're all gonna like whatever, like just high five and make out with each other over like whatever. Mario Party 3. And if you own a Nintendo console, you probably owned it for Nintendo games. If you own a Sony console, I mean, the exclusives on PlayStation are fantastic.
So let's get all these figures out into that bag. So bagging all of these up.
So I think that's kind of why I see a lot of talk about the N64, even though it did not sell nearly as well as the PS1. You know what? Nintendo learned their lesson with the N64. Not really, because then we have the GameCube, which was fundamentally kind of just Nintendo taking the N64 and just making it more advanced in every way. You know, unlike a lot of Nintendo consoles, consoles, you know, like from the Nintendo DS onward, the GameCube didn't really have like a massive gimmick. It was kind of just like, yeah, we're gonna do another console and it's gonna be more powerful. And similarly to the N64, you see a lot of people have wonderful memories of the GameCube, myself included. And yeah, I think there's a lot of GameCube talk around, mainly because like, yeah, it's similar to the N64. You have 2 GameCube owners in a room, and they're basically gonna start fucking each other. Like, oh yeah, I played Pikmin 2 as well. And, you know, you put 2 PS2 owners in a room, and like, you know, one owned Fantavision and one owned ESPN NBA basketball. Like, what do you want them to talk about with each other? The GameCube did even worse than the N64, and you know, I think it was just because they did not really learn anything from the N64 debacle. It's like
I have both of those sets. Which is, I still can't believe I own both of those. I have the I've got the 2007 Vulcan, and the dropshipping AT-OT are in there. The mess from hell.
DVDs, which could store a lot more data, and these could basically store like half the amount of data as a PS2 game. So we were basically in the exact same fucking problem that we had with the N64. Now GameCube didn't get a lot of the third-party games that it needed because they chose a stupid ass format for their games. It all started with the N64, their third console. You know, eventually Nintendo kind of got things back on track with the Wii in 2006, their fifth console, and of course with Nintendo's sixth console, so their second, third. Oh my lord, I cannot escape this thing, can I? Yeah, the Wii U is the second, third console, so of course it failed. Nintendo's biggest flop in terms of their main line home consoles. You know, I mean, you can take a look at stuff like Virtual Boy or the Game Boy Micro or whatever, and yeah, those did worse. But in terms of like their dedicated main line home consoles, the Wii U did absolutely worse. Now, why was that?
It's a guy talking about like why every third game console a manufacturer makes is bad, and he's onto something. He's talking about like how Nintendo screwed up with a couple of things. The Wii U went horribly wrong.
You know, I think it needed to be Wii something. Nintendo had to be cutesy about it, naming Wii U instead of just something basic like Wii 2. Many people assumed this was just a controller add-on. THQ released the U-Draw game tablet for the Wii. And it is a tablet with this giant touch-sensitive area that you use a stylus with, that you put a Wii remote in, and you know, multiple Wii games support it. When this kind of stuff...
Right, we're getting somewhere with this.
Yeah, the Wii U just kind of seemed like it was just an accessory. And I don't think it helped that Nintendo obviously didn't really have a core idea for what this controller could do. I remember back with the Wii's initial reveal, you know, when they first revealed the Nintendo Revolution's innovative new controller. And it felt like Nintendo had a billion uses for the Wii remote, and it just kind of got your brain cooking as to like, oh my god, really think about the possibilities with this thing. And they did a similar thing with the Wii U gamepad, but it felt like even with their initial reveal trailer that like they were really stretching with this. It's just the Wii U gamepad felt very uninspired. It just kind of felt like, hey, let's put a screen on the controller, and surely some ideas will come from that. And not a ton really ever did. I'm not gonna act like there's never been good uses for this controller. I mean, hey, I've had tons of really fun experiences on the Wii U that really did utilize the controller's screen. But for the most part, I would say a good 80 to 90% throughout the entire Wii U library felt very forced, uninspired, or was just flat out bad. And third-party devs gave this console a good year and a half or so of a try. You know, 2013 was kind of like the last major year we really saw any major third-party games. And then in 2014, there was nothing other than Watch Dogs, because Ubisoft promised that it would come out on Wii U. And after that, from 2015 onward, the Wii U basically got like no substantial third-party support. Like it got Just Dance games, the Skylanders games, the Lego games. You got a couple of like releases, Darksiders War Mastered Edition.
There we go. That's better.
I don't know, man. But then it comes down to the Nintendo games themselves. Nintendo had a fair amount of very solid games on the Wii U.
That is not smart.
More mediocre ones, and some outright horrible games. But you know, the good games on Wii U were really damn good. But even with a ton of really good exclusives, I think the problem is the Wii U just didn't really have like a ton of like, wow, you got to drop everything and spend $300 on this game right here. I would even say by experiences that I think could have been system sellers. The problem is they just released too late. I would say the two big Wii U games that I think
So that can be a New Hope stuff that we'll get stuck on there. So like, that will go on there.
By that point, the Wii U, it was already dead. By March of 2015, Nintendo already announced they had plans to make a brand new console, the Nintendo NX. For years, kind of the notion with a lot of consoles that aren't doing very well is that you need good games. Without good games, your consoles are going to sell.
There we go. So I can just start moving things based on what they need to be. So like, for example, the landing craft from 07, this thing got annihilated.
So unappealing that nobody wanted it. It didn't matter. You could put the greatest game of all time on this thing, and they did. The last Nintendo published game on this thing was Breath of the Wild, one of the greatest games of all time. And nobody gave a fuck about it on the Wii U. They wanted it on the Nintendo Switch. I think the Wii U's biggest problem was that it was directionless. They wanted to do a gimmicky controller again because they saw that was successful with the Wii, and they just kind of made this without really thinking much about it. They didn't really think it through enough. I'm done with this clown. Now let's talk about I don't know, the town jester. Microsoft's third console was the Xbox One. You had the original Xbox in 2001, then the Xbox 360 in 2005, and they wanted to be cute. And the Xbox One. Genuinely one of the stupidest goddamn names of all time. I'm sorry. You know, I think the Wii U's name is more confusing casually.
Yep, that's the pod racer self-destructing itself again.
Like retrospectively, because you know they weren't selling Xbox Ones like the first Xboxes on store shelves at the time. Just a dumb name, man. Especially they wanted to push this as the all-in-one Ultimate Entertainment Center. Also, it doesn't play your Xbox 360 games. Alright, so Microsoft was riding a bit of a high from the Xbox 360 era. Even though near the end of that era, Sony was definitely starting to gain a lot more market share. And, you know, the Xbox 360 actually ended up being the third best-selling console of that generation. Near the beginning of the 360's life, Microsoft was really trying by, you know, pumping out just big ass exclusives. You got the original Gears of War, and of course you got Halo 3. And of course throughout the generation, Microsoft also worked in tandem with Activision to kind of have Call of Duty call Xbox 360 its home. It's still released on PS3, but in all the marketing, Call of Duty was always on 360. And you had a lot of third-party exclusives, like BioShock was initially an exclusive for the 360. Same with Mass Effect 1. Microsoft actually got Grand Theft Auto 4 to come out day and date on the Xbox 360 right alongside the PS3. Now, Peter Moore at the time, he did like two little stunts to reveal like release dates. And
one of my favorite sets of all time, and people always question when I bring this up. 2006 X-Wing's up there, always.
I don't actually know if any of this is real. That GTA 4 tattoo looks
Nice.
a little painted on, but hey, I mean, he did it, apparently. I don't know. Point is, Microsoft was serious. They really wanted you to know, like, hey, we're serious. And you
Got the other X-Wing I've got, the 2012 one.
On there. But eventually, I think Microsoft wanted an even bigger piece of the pie. And in 2010, they started going after more of the casual market than Nintendo went after with the Wii. This is around the time that Microsoft started focusing more on just everybody and also kind of like the core titles that were kind of just like surefire pets at that point. Every Microsoft E3 press conference was like the exact same. You got
Right, we're gonna put Snow Speeder up there.
That fall, and then you had a new Halo, a new Gears of War, and a new Forza, and that was basically all Xbox was from there on out. Of course, that and a bunch of Kinect casual garbage. Now, the Kinect for Xbox 360 had a ton of potential, and it was kind of fun in many instances. But overall, I think Microsoft overpromised and underdelivered with the Kinect. Was it a decent piece of technology? Yes. Was it a good video game controller? Not really. The tech was decent, but it wasn't good enough to really be like a substantial enough video game controller. And of course, Microsoft was also focusing big time on movies and TV with the Xbox 360. The 360 was turning into this big multimedia device. They introduced Internet Explorer for the 360. They started doing Xbox Smart Glass, where, oh man, you get a second screen experience when you're watching all your shows. Netflix and all these other streaming services were a big push. And overall, well, the 360 was still like a great platform. It was honestly still like probably my preferred pick around that era. It was focusing solely on good ass games. The Xbox 360, by comparison, it had games, you know, like
And I got hit in the head by the Star
Of course,
Destroyer.
it got a ton of third-party support. It pretty much got all the third-party games you could want at the time. But it felt like the PS3 was far more passionate about actual video games in that moment, and it felt like Microsoft was.
This is one of the sets that I was the most worried about taking the most damage. And, well, I kinda did and kinda didn't.
Bled into the Xbox One's reveal in May of 2013. And this is one of the most disastrous product
So, the structural components of this set are fine, but the bridge is smashed, as is its nose.
Hour-long press conference, the bulk of the Xbox One's reveal was all about just its menu interface and how it's so much more convenient to watch TV shows and movies this way. They showed off a brand new Kinect that was forcibly bundled with the Xbox One. Now, to an extent, I kind of get why Microsoft wanted to do this, because that way they don't have to worry about, like, oh, which one of our Xbox One users has a Kinect and which ones don't. Like, no, it's just always in the box. However, the problem is a lot of stuff started coming out after this console reveal, which already wasn't popular, and all this was confirmed. The Kinect must be plugged in at all times. You have to be connected to the internet. You cannot play used games with the Xbox One. They ended up showing like FIFA and like Forza 5 and like Quantum Break, and then they started talking about like a Halo TV show with Steven Spielberg's involvement, and it's just kind of like, what does this have to? Who cares? I think it's crazy. They're doing this big concert deal. They're talking about a Steven Spielberg Halo TV show, and that thing didn't even come out until 2022. Like, this functionally had nothing to do with the Xbox One.
There we go.
Crazy. This is
I have had to slightly behead the Star Destroyer, but it's in.
And it did immense damage to Microsoft and the Xbox brand. And I don't think Microsoft really ever recovered much from this. Now, thankfully, it was only a couple weeks later that E3 2013 happened. And I think a lot of people look back at E3 2013 and they go like, oh yeah, PlayStation absolutely creamed Xbox at that time. And while that is true, I think a lot of people don't really remember that like Microsoft's press conference, in my opinion, was actually pretty okay. You know, they started off with Metal Gear Solid 5, and they ended
Remove the slave one down to there.
Everybody at the time. You had a teaser for the Halo game, so that teaser had literally like
Some of the
nothing
pod
to
racer
do
part.
with what Halo 5 ended up being. Like it was literally just like nonsense. It's like, oh, Master Chief is in a cloak. Dead Rising 3, Sunset Overdrive.
Right, okay.
Return of Killer Instinct, which turned out to be a great fighting game. There was a decent amount of good stuff.
That's the Return of the Jedi thing. Can go up there.
The problem was, it was still the Xbox One. And the Xbox One put a big-ass stink in everybody's mouth. There was just all this bad PR afterwards where, like, Don Matrix said, like, oh, yeah, if the Xbox One isn't doing it for you and you don't like the online-only thing, we'll just buy an Xbox 360. And it's just like, well, that's just stupid.
This is something I cannot wait to do that I'll be doing in the next couple of days. So this set here, the Gungan sub from 2012, has some yellowing on it. I will be getting that sorted. I've got the parts have arrived, so that set will be looking a lot better soon.
Forcibly included, and they weren't going back on any of this nonsense that they were pushing, and that pretty much ensured the PS4 was winning that generation. It didn't even matter. In my opinion, I think the PS4 had a far worse launch lineup than the Xbox One. You had Forza 5 at the Xbox One's launch, which is, you know, I mean, Forza is a great quality sim racing game. And then Dead Rising 3, which is actually pretty good. Like, Dead Rising 3 is not bad. And I think they actually did a good job showcasing the power of this generation with how many zombies were on screen. And then you had Rise Son of Rome, which was definitely a little more controversial. It's kind of like, okay, this is a really good-looking game, but, you know, it is kind of very cutscene heavy, you know. But overall, like, I think the Xbox One's launch was better than the PS4's with, like, Knack and Killzone Shadowfall. And thankfully, a couple weeks after E3, it's pretty obvious Microsoft was kind of seeing, like, okay, this isn't working out. Xbox One,
05 Turbo Tank, which has ripped again. This set had a slight tendency to rip parts of itself off.
Microsoft sort of so much stuff we do these days is always online. It requires all this garbage, and like Microsoft themselves, they've gone pretty much fully digital at this point. So in many ways, it does kind of feel like Microsoft was a bit ahead of the time with the Xbox One initially, even if it was in really dumb ways. Like they announced Crackdown 3. Crackdown 3 was really well wanted. Like people were like, we want another Crackdown game. And they finally announced that they would say like, oh, we're going to take advantage of the cloud. Then you can just destroy the entire environment. That's going to be crazy.
There we go. We can put these on the Attack of the Clones shelf. That's looking great. Same with that. That's Falcon. That's some. It's going to set up here until I get it prepared.
It was very good for the consumer at that time, but I'm interested to see like what they wanted to do with that moving forward. If it would have.
That's the stand for said Falcon, but I need to put its cockpit back on. That's Revenge of the Sith Walker there. That's part of the Anakin versus Obi-Wan.
2013. Yeah, a lot of people had the internet, but it's also like it was 2013. The internet was not as good as it is nowadays. Like I look back at how things were in 2013, and like I'm seeing YouTube videos were only at like 720p, and I'm just like, wow, this looks way worse than I remember. So while I'm kind of interested to see like what they could have done with the initial plan with the Xbox One, I also feel like they actually wouldn't have done anything, and it was literally just a measure to stop piracy, stop used game sales, and try to make the most money possible. Now, since thankfully Microsoft walked back on all those things, everything's all fine and good, right? No, the Xbox One was a bit less powerful than the PS4. Now, in practice, most of the time, like if you're going to play a third-party game on Xbox One, it would be perfectly fine. Like, it wouldn't have made much of a difference. But that was kind of a bit of a stinger when the Xbox One was $499, well, because of that damn Kinect. And guess what? Barely any games even use the damn Kinect. They forced it in the package, and like barely anything actually used the Kinect. Like there's only like 20-something games on the Xbox One in general that need or
One
use
sec,
the
this is
Kinect
ripping
anyway.
its wing
Now,
slightly.
here's the thing. Thankfully, I
One
would
second,
say
guys, I'll be right back, but we are making a lot of progress
kind
with
of
this.
peaked at that point. Because after that, Microsoft really tried to re-steer the ship. Eventually, they dropped the Kinect from the Xbox One bundle, and that dropped the price of this thing to $399. And they started to try to do a lot of good faith things here and there. Stuff like introducing Xbox 360 games as backwards compatible titles. Microsoft introduced Xbox Game Pass, which ended up becoming the thing that Microsoft started pushing the most, and to some extent it could be considered what really is making Xbox even worse these days. But still, at the time, Xbox Game Pass was a great deal. But you know what I think was one of the biggest problems with the Xbox One that was never really solved? Game lineup. I just felt like Microsoft's exclusive games took a massive hit this generation, and just there wasn't really enough compelling stuff at all. And even a lot of the games that people really loved from the Xbox 360 or original Xbox, like yeah, they were here, but they just didn't really hit the same. Halo was kind of stumbling around. You had Gears of War Ultimate Edition, Gears of War 4, Gears of War 5, and those are all, again, good quality games, but I just felt like the Gears series at this point was not really appealing to anybody other than Gears of War fans. There just wasn't really a ton that Microsoft was pumping out that was really getting everybody's attention from all other corners. Like, it was just kind of like the same old stuff, or just a random exclusive that they did with a random company that just never really turned out that amazing. Something like ReCore. ReCore was kind of like this weird one-off exclusive game that they actually ended up doing like a definitive edition of later down the line to fix a lot of the problems with the original ReCore. Super Lucky's Tale was kind of a weird one. Okay, you get a little 3D platform, but it was a pretty generic 3D platformer based on an old VR exclusive game. The one thing I think Microsoft did really well in this generation were the indie games, because I remember Inside was an Xbox One exclusive initially, and Cuphead was an Xbox One exclusive initially. And those are two massive gets. That's great. Good for Microsoft. But overall, it's really hard to even look back and name a bunch of Xbox One exclusives. A lot of games that should have been big moments for this console ended up not turning out very well, or just falling flat, or just being completely forgettable. And that's the Xbox One's legacy at the end of the day. The worst stuff about this thing happened before it launched. And then when it launched, I mean, like, it was a perfectly serviceable console. I think most people just kind of like used it for like, Call of Duty, and just, your third-party games at that time. But other than that, like, there just wasn't a ton going on with this thing. And it did okay overall. I think it sold roughly around 50 million units. But you compare that to what the PS4 did, all the amazing games that came out on PS4 and the excitement surrounding that platform, the Xbox One obviously really struggled to kind of maintain relevance and excitement. Now, of course, its legacy lives on with the Xbox Series X and S because, fundamentally, those consoles just kind of continue the Xbox One's whole shtick. And to an extent, those platforms have even worse problems with like exclusive games and everything. But to be fair, like Microsoft's strategy has changed a lot with the jump to that generation. And Microsoft basically became like a third-party publisher. And I just don't really think the Series X and Series S really had
You guys are nuts. You know that.
as the Xbox One did. And it's very obvious where the problem with this console.
One sec, guys.
It began with Microsoft thinking, hey, we're untouchable.
Ah.
We're the kings of gaming. Nothing can stop us. Yeah, and it turned out everything stopped them. Next up, what was PlayStation's third console called? But regardless, I already kind of mentioned a little bit about the PS3's initial problems during the Xbox One segment here. Honestly, Sony was kind of doing a lot of the same stuff Microsoft did with the Xbox One. It's pretty crazy how these companies never really seem to learn. They have tremendous success with one console, and then the next one, a lot of times, they get pretty arrogant and they just think they can do whatever they want. That console humbles them a bit, and then the next console they kind of try to like, all right, we got to do something a little different here. But of course, Sony was arrogant as going into the PS3. I mean, the PS2 was the best-selling console of all time, following up the PlayStation 1, which was the best-selling console of all time. So with the PS3, it felt like Sony wanted to create the ultimate device. They were like, let's just cram as many things into this as possible. They put in the Cell processor, which could have done all kinds of things. The PS3 had like 1 billion card readers and inputs on it. You look through the user interface of the thing, and it's capable of all kinds of stuff. And graphically, it was unmatched. The PS3 looked magical. Like games look like real life on this thing. But of course, all of this came at a cost. And of course, the big controversial moment for the PS3 was that E3 2006 press conference. They announced the price of $599 US. Now, of course, that was for the most expensive model of PS3. Sony was offering cheaper options at like, $499, but that was a huge chunk of change. Now, that's a huge chunk of change these days. Think about it back in 2006. For the first couple of years of the PS3, it wasn't getting like a ton of like exclusives that were like, oh my god, must-haves. You had Resistance: Fall of Man at the very launch of the PS3, and that's decent enough. A year later in 2007, you got Uncharted, which, again, Uncharted, while it became a big deal, the first Uncharted was like, yeah, it was good, but, I think Uncharted 2 really did make a huge difference. Then you had stuff like Ratchet & Clank Future Tools of Destruction, which, again, is good, but Ratchet & Clank games, there's only so much those things can do. Like, they're always fun. They're always good, but to me, a lot of the Ratchet & Clank games, they sort of kind of blend in with each other. They're all different, but it's also like a Ratchet & Clank game is a Ratchet & Clank game. It's kind of just like, this is going to give you a good time. That's all it is. It's just like, I know I'm going to get a good game with a Ratchet & Clank game. I'd say things started to change with Metal Gear Solid 4 in 2008. But even then, I think the PS3 really started to change things up in 2009 with the redesigned PS3 Slim. Because that effectively gave you a much better price point of $299. Now, the original model PS3, they had multiple different SKUs to that thing at multiple price points. It wasn't always just a $599 model. I think the problem is it was always really confusing. Like the premium PS3s, you could actually play PS2 games on those things. But then lower end model PS3s, you couldn't play PS2 games on them. You could only play PS1 or PS3 games. Some PS3s had different card readers on them. Some of them didn't. Back in the day, like I didn't know what the hell was the difference between a lot of these different models. And eventually Sony just said, okay, we're redesigning the PS3. They just stripped out PS2 backwards compatibility in general because PS2 backwards compatibility was pretty expensive to include. Like they pretty much had to include an entire PS2 in the PS3. But that slim model really, really helped things. Because I'd say from 2009 onwards, Sony had a consistent supply of great exclusives and just cool stuff going on from there on out. And I mean, damn good deals for $2.99. The PS3 was a great Blu-ray player, and you had PS1 support. Great games on the PS3. Eventually, they introduced the PlayStation Move, which but it doesn't matter. Eventually, the PS3 became a really solid option for anybody looking for a new game console. And even with some bumps in the road, like there was the infamous PlayStation Network hack in 2011. I think Sony made things pretty right. Like they mentioned it at their E3 2011 press conference, and they gave everybody a bunch of free games. The PS3 ended up being like probably the best console from that generation easily. And it just shows that you just gotta stick with it sometimes. Even if a product isn't an immediate success at launch, a lot of times it can become one. You just gotta keep supporting it. If only Sega knew that. Oh, Jesus Christ. I mean, what do you even consider to be Sega's third console? Because, we start with the Sega Master System, then
That's
the Sega
good.
Genesis, but then you have add-ons for the
Right.
Sega Genesis,
I'm back.
which are basically their very own consoles. You have the Sega CD, which did okay overall. The 32X, which was a massive fucking bomb. And then you have the Saturn, which did pretty good in Japan, and did absolutely just balls everywhere else. I would say it's the Saturn, but I mean, hell, you could say the 32X if you really wanted to. The 32X is funny. There's really not much for the 32X. It doesn't really
You
have
guys won in terms of audience members that are just insane.
The Virtual Boy at least has a couple of decent games, but I mean 32X. I mean what? Why do you want to use the 32X? Now the Sega CD has far better games, and there's more of a way to actually get this, especially back in the day. But the CD was just kind of like a overly expensive add-on that was just a little too ahead of its time. Like the loading times were absurd on this thing, and the type of games available on it, I just kind of feel like you need to wait another generation for that 32-bit era, PlayStation, Sega Saturn, because those
Right.
were,
So we're pretty much where we want to be with this. I will not be streaming for too much longer unless I find a good reason to.
Looks like ass. They're still trying to figure out how to utilize CD functionality properly with video games. So yeah, there's just a lot of FMV garbage on the Sega CD. But we have the Sega Saturn, which the Saturn is a good game console.
So I'll pack all this. I'll see how much battery power my phone has left, and from there we'll figure out what we're doing. Because obviously I plan to produce some shorts tonight as well. Because that is a big part of my content as well.
Future of gaming was going to be 2D gaming enhanced with some 3D elements in there. But then you look over at the PS1, which was doing a lot more 3D stuff, especially when the N64 came along, like it's pretty much doing nothing but 3D stuff. I think Sega went like, oh sh. So they threw in another processor in the Sega Saturn to just do more 3D stuff. Like, I don't know. Like apparently this thing was.
I finally got it where it needs to be, and that means the rebuilding organization will be easier. We'll just do it one at a time.
Gorgeous on this thing, but 3D games, the Saturn doesn't do 3D the best, but I can still do it. What really killed the Saturn was the fact that Sega just kind of put it out in the stores. They really didn't tell anybody. They just announced they were like,
I don't know what to say about any of what I'm reading. Other than that, it's 11 at night, and this is what I'm reading.
Sega Saturn price-wise, the Saturn was basically $399. The PS1 was $299, and the fact that Sega rushed this thing to market and the launch games weren't very good, like that pissed off developers because they couldn't finish their games properly. So you just had like shitty ports of Virtua Fighter 1 and for some reason, Sega just didn't really give a shit about making a Sonic game for the Saturn. They told Sonic Team, it's just like, why don't you do something else? Make us a new Sonic, pretty much. And they made Knights into Dreams, which Knights into Dreams is a cool game. But Sonic was Sega's mascot, man. It's kind of like if Nintendo went from the NES to the Super Nintendo, and they were like, we shouldn't make another Mario game. We should make something new. It's like, yes, make something new, but you should also continue the popular franchise. And, they tried to, but, like, it just didn't end up working out. You got Sonic Jam, which is just a compilation of Sonic games. A cool one, but still just a compilation. An enhanced port of Sonic 3D Blast. That didn't
Right,
impress
I'm going to quickly go grab something, and then we're going to organise a couple of things here and there. We could still stream for like another hour, so I need to figure out what we're doing for that extra hour. So I'll be back. Sorry about this, by the way.
On the Saturn, but it just was the worst development hell of all time. Like, this game went through the ringer. So yeah, I think Sega just got a little too weird with the Sega Saturn, and they gave up too soon. Sega burned a lot of people with the Sega Saturn, specifically developers. Electronic Arts was like, "Fuck you, Sega, we're not going to develop for your shit anymore." And they refused to support the Sega Dreamcast. In the end, the Saturn did pretty good in Japan, but it just gained absolutely no traction here in North America. Which, weirdly enough, you know, the Genesis was what was really popular in North America. Didn't do as well in Japan, so they kind of flipped things around there. But Sega definitely got a little too cocky and a little too crazy with the Saturn. And I think that kind of shows, like, what happens with a lot of these third consoles. These companies just get a little too ballsy. They think they can do no wrong, when in reality, they kind of need to be humbled a lot of the time. And I think it's kind of funny that it's always the third console. You know, we'll see if that continues with these companies, because, you know, it happened with Nintendo on the third, it happened with Nintendo on the 6th. When we get to the 9th, we'll see. When we get to the PlayStation 6, who knows? Maybe that'll be a massive, massive failure. But let this be a lesson to you. Don't get too big of a head, because you're not as cool as you may think you are. Because you may think you're an Xbox 360, but you might be an Xbox One, and that's fucking embarrassing. Man, what a shame we don't get mini consoles anymore. I mean, how likely is it we're ever gonna finally get the mini version of this? It was a bit of a craze, if you will, an addiction, an infestation. The retro mini console fad. That's what it was. It was a fad, because, like, how many of these are you really seeing these days? And when I do see mini consoles released these days, they're kind of like, you know, like, oh, the smaller company is finally, like, throwing their hat in the ring. Why the hell not? Yeah, for a bit there, starting in 2016 with the NES Classic Edition, and, you know, a bit beforehand, you know, this whole craze kind of started with other systems, but, you know, the NES Classic Edition really popularized it. And, you know, after that, we got Sega throwing their hat in the ring, Sony with the PlayStation Classic, and, you know, we got all kinds of stuff here. I mean, Sega themselves did 2 different ones alongside the Game Gear.
Interesting idea we got there.
Mini, the TurboGrafx 16 Mini. I felt like every retro game-oriented company was throwing their hat in the ring. I mean, you even have companies like Capcom with this giant-ass Capcom, dumbass Capcom arcade stick. But to truly understand...
Well then, guys, you guys need to help me get to 5,000 a bit faster. We're not even at 4,000.
The beginning is looking awfully Atari flashbacky. I mean, you can make arguments as to where this really started. We can go all the way back to, like, the very first plug-and-play consoles. Maybe one of the very first was, like, this Activision one by Jack's Pacific. And, you know, I feel like everybody in the early to mid-2000s had at least one of these things. Now, I had the Pac-Man, Ms. Pac-Man arcade sticks. I had this Atari 2600 joystick. And, you know, I do think that's where a lot of this mini console spirit began. Because, I mean, just the fact that you had, like, this arcade-like joystick in your home. Even though, you know, like, when I play with one of these today, like, it doesn't really feel like a joystick. It feels like a toy adaptation of an arcade joystick. Just very thin, squeaky, like, feel like when you're, like, trying to, like, move things around with it. But in the mid-2000s, it did the job. I felt like the Atari 2600 joystick was actually, like, the most spot.
The UCS one no longer exists.
It was just a flat-out replica of an Atari joystick. I honestly also felt with, you know, having a battery compartment in there and having the entire, like,
but
of the game console as a part of the joystick.
There's the 06 one.
Of course, I'm kind of, like, just remembering this right now. Who knows? It could be, like, the most god-awful.
But the other one, the UCS one's in that bag as an unfortunate accident when putting up the new shelving. But, you know, Return of the Jedi stuff's up here, Empire here, A New Hope, Revenge of the Sith, Attack of the Clones, and the Phantom Menace. So, yes, it is still funny. Like, I got to sit and fix the Star Destroyer, but we are getting where we want to be with all this.
Further. Okay, why not 20 Atari games? This is the Atari Flashback console, and I always heard so much about these throughout, you know, the late 2000s, early 2010s. This almost seemed like this was like if you wanted to take the plug-and-play experience and just go hog wild with it. This one is an actual console. I mean, you can't put cartridges in it, but this is definitely more of an actual console in comparison to the plug-and-play. For one, this does not work with batteries, which in my opinion, that originally made the OG plug-and-play joystick super convenient. Literally just plug it into your TV, you're good to go, flick it on, you're playing your game in seconds. Of course, the batteries get a little... They're kind of going for a Atari 7800 style thing with the controllers, even the console. Even though Atari consoles generally did look like this. But if you want to go for nostalgia, why base it off of all of that when what everybody remembers with Atari is that classic old Atari 2600 with the wood grain finish and the controllers that don't look like a goddamn whatever. This looks like a buzzer when you're in the hospital and you want to call for the nurse. The problem with these old Atari consoles is that for the most part they kind of just stick to the Atari made games for the Atari 2600, and they're not the greatest. I mean, Atari has some classic games here. You have Asteroid, Centipede, but for the most part,
Put my laptop away.
the games that defined a generation. Yes, a lot of them were on Atari 2600 and Atari, but they weren't the games Atari themselves were making. Like Pro, Sprint Master. I gotta say, with this game collection being,
I don't know what to say about any of this.
Like I said, the plug and play console I had 10 games, and you had a much more authentic Atari 2600 joystick. I mean, even if you want to be like, oh yeah, these are inspired by the Atari 7800. These are not the Atari 7800 controllers. And honestly, that Atari 2600 joystick that I had had a good chunk of the biggest Atari titles. So my old plug and play had Adventure, Breakout, Asteroid, Yar's Revenge, and Centipede. Also had Missile Command, Pong, buddy. Where the hell is Pong? For being a much more, we're taking this shit seriously kind of product, at the end of the day, it doesn't really feel like it. Yes, there are more games built in, but this doesn't really feel like this big celebration.
I've got a question for you guys watching, right?
Compared to the plug and play, which was definitely a lot cheaper, and you also had like Pong, which is just it's fucking Pong. How are you gonna make this big old? It's all right here. Not fucking Pong apparently, but this is kind of cool. Includes the never before released Saboteur. That's something that a lot of these mini consoles eventually started to do, was kind of bring in games that might be lost games, canceled games, or just kind of weird little things. That is kind of neat. But why take me when we get what the Atari Flashback should have been in the goddamn first place? Yes, the Atari Flashback initiated a long-lasting lineup of Atari classic game console plug-and-play systems. And with the Atari Flashback 2, we actually kind of get something that, it feels a lot more like what mini consoles eventually become. Just the fact that it actually looks like the original Atari 2600. The joysticks are much more like Atari 2600 joysticks. And
do you guys want me to do some gaming?
Pitfall. That's an Activision game.
On the stream.
They actually went out of their way to include not just Atari-owned properties. Gotta be honest, this feels like a much better celebration of the Atari 2600. Now, to be fair, a lot of this stuff isn't the most authentic. I mean, you can even see with Pong right here. That isn't the Atari 2600 version of Pong. Now, this is actually one of those weird things. There's no game on the Atari 2600 called Pong. Look at that, we got Pong Sports, we got the Olympics. But yeah, there is no cartridge titled Pong, and this is kind of more of a replication of what the original arcade game was, I guess. Now over time, Atari Flashback consoles.
I'll set up the laptop. I might do some gaming now.
They kept on numbering them, added new games, maybe swapped some games out for other ones, and Atari swapped spit with a bunch of different manufacturers and publishers of the Atari Flashback brand of consoles. This right here was the very first Atari Flashback console created by At Games. Weird ass. This is a company that wanted to do a bunch of these, you know, dedicated little plug-and-play game consoles. It's kind of what we were in the 2010s. Most notably, they did Atari stuff and Sega stuff. Where we have this Sega Genesis Arcade Motion. It's kind of just meant to be like a bit of a, oh, it's a classic game console, but also it's a Wii knockoff. This company just didn't really give a damn. The original manufacturer of a bunch of these like old plug-and-play like arcade sticks was Jakks Pacific, which that's some baby boy bullshit right there. I remember the name Jakks Pacific a lot. Jakks Pacific was all about making toys. At Games felt a lot more like dedicated to like doing retro game nonsense products. The only problem I have with old Jakks Pacific plug-and-plays, it was the early to mid 2000s. This wasn't really like a very well-known thing at that point to get like emulation and quality down to a T. It's 2003. The Pac-Man arcade stick makes me feel all quality. That's all that matters. My game systems, though, I think people were a lot more accustomed to like what good and bad quality like retro game products are. But it didn't matter at this point because At Games was like the only company that could actually get into like big retail stores. Like you would see At Games products at Walmart's, Dollar General's, CVS, Walgreens, and they were working with.
I'll be curious to see what then the final comment count is on the stream.
Most notably, Atari. They took over the Atari flashback line of systems.
There's like well over 100 due to what went on with the last one.
Retro plug-and-play products. Now Namco, they started to do stuff with Namco. Activision. And, it was cool to see a lot of these products like in actual stores. I remember going to a Dollar General and seeing like the Sega Genesis classic game console, and I'm going like, what? Especially considering this thing has a game cartridge slot. You could put Genesis games in it, and it was like $50 or something. Plus, it came included with a bunch of different classic Sega Genesis games. The problem is when you actually plug this thing in, it is like the cheapest, most bootleg feeling garbage. Here's the problem. At the end of the day, these types of systems were never made for like, the enthusiasts. They were made for the guy that hasn't played a video game for 30 years. He's walking in a dollar store during like, the holiday season, and he comes across this Genesis classic game console. I remember the Sega Genesis. He's gonna buy it, bring it home, plug it in, and play it for like an hour, and be like, "Wow, yeah, that was the Sega Genesis, all right." But when you actually take a look at like how the games play and how they feel with these At Games products, they feel like crap. They get enough right where like it's serviceable for a casual consumer, which is all they're really meant to be. But I bet you most casual consumers play these and they think like, yeah, that was fine. But here's the thing, even with something like these Sega At Games,
I'm just raising my eyebrow. I have nothing more to say about any of this.
They don't notice at the time. I bet you comparing this with like a much better product, let's say like in the future, the Sega Genesis Mini from 2019, they would 100% have so much more fun with that, with like it's very high quality emulation, it's better quality controllers, all of this stuff. So even if they can't put their finger on like oh, what's wrong with this experience, I bet you they play this At Games product for an hour and they're like, yep, that's generally the Sega experience I remember, and then they throw it into a damn closet and they forget about it for forever. Comparing that with a much more high quality product, I bet you even if you don't know what the hell to say about it, other than it's better, like those are gonna feel better, and I bet you they're gonna play it for far longer. These At Games products were always just kind of meant to like, oh, win you over at the checkout line, and then you play it for an hour, and that's it. But this damn company ruled the damn world of retro gaming. And like the pre-NES crap, like it was like fine. They were okay at the Atari stuff. They were okay at the television and all that. But it was never like, oh my god, this is some gourmet shit. It was always pretty just half-assed. But after the whole plug-and-play joystick
Says who?
The early to mid 2000s, this was pretty much what retro.
I want proof of these accusations.
In the 2010s. That was until the Messiah, the NES Classic Edition, released in 2016, produced entirely in-house over at Nintendo. Now, this definitely released kind of out of necessity for Nintendo. 2016 was a very off year, and by off, I mean dog shit. This was the Wii U's final full year, and it damn well felt like it. The 3DS didn't get
Cheese cuddles.
outside of like Pokemon Sun and Moon.
It's just cuddled. It's cheese cuddles is what I'm eating.
Into mobile for the first time with stuff like Miitomo and Super Mario Run. Overall, like a decent amount of stuff happened in 2016, but instead of being genuine pieces of content, most of Nintendo's releases that year it just kind of felt like sick jokes. But by October of that
So this is my budget gaming chair that I've joked about previously.
and there was like absolutely no reason to buy a Wii U. I know, I'm sure with the next Nintendo home console also being a handheld, many people thought, why the hell would I buy a 3DS as well? So in came the NES Classic Edition. It's kind of like a fun little boutique one-off
Right.
item at the time.
So,
They announced this in
what
the
console are we playing for the next little bit?
headlines, kind of
Original Xbox, PlayStation 2, or 360? What we playing?
Store shelves. And I thought to myself, like when I read stuff
I'm gonna
like
get a
that,
snack
I
while
was
you
like,
guys
wow,
decide what we're gonna be playing.
Nintendo's in such a bad spot. They're just re-releasing the original NES, like cartridges and all. I don't know why I thought that, because obviously this made a lot more sense. This is fundamentally like Nintendo's take on an Atari flashback type console. But whereas those things felt like fleeting gimmicks, this felt like a genuine product that had a reason to stand on store shelves. There was a reason to pick it up for everybody. Like Atari flashbacks, like sure, many of them look like the Atari 2600, but I mean they have these giant ass yellow ass buttons, and it just they feel a lot cheaper. They aren't like a downsized replica of the thing. It just feels like a weird ass little Fisher Price toy. The NES Classic Edition, by comparison, just feels a lot more high quality. The controllers included are practically like one-to-one replicas. The original molds used for the original NES brought back here. Like this.
We want to play the original Xbox? We'll play the original Xbox.
Oh, man, I grew up with the NES. Here's just an NES Classic Edition to represent that on my shelf. I feel like you can't really do that as much with an Atari flashback console. It just kind of looks like, what the hell is that doing on the shelf?
Original Xbox it is. As per decided by my viewers. So let me get my laptop out. Now, quick little slightly stressed out note here. I don't know where half the laptop charger is. It's in two pieces. It'd be great if I knew where the other half of that actually was. So I've got one piece of my charger for the laptop. But I need to locate the other bit. Then this is causing quite a bit of stress. I don't know where the hell it went. See, that's the joy of moving things around and being a bit disorganised as you do it. So that's the cable for my fan. Look, guys, there's a slight chance I won't be able to read your comments while we stream this. I'm trying to think where I'm going to put it. Is that? Nah, it's not it in there, no. I know it's not on the shelf of the Cold War stuff because all that's been out like twice from being put there, so I know that it's not there. So you guys, I cannot read your comments, but I will still game for a while. Let's go open that original Xbox controller. So this will be with the see what do I want to play. I keep mixing up the power and eject button on this console. I've been working more on the first game, so we're going to play that. Have a little look at what I've got on this. Halo 1. Star Wars Republic Commando and KOTOR, which is the game I'm going to play. I spent like 2 hours and 48 minutes playing that. It's the game I've spent the most time on this console so far. Volume's down because it's a Star Wars game. I will get copyrighted. What? You're right. I heard you talking. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. So, see when it comes to Star Wars gaming, right? A lot of people ask me what my favorite Star Wars game is. That is one of my favorites, the Old Republic games. Star Wars gaming from this generation just feels different.
That's where I'm stuck. Trying to get my again.
Alright, so basically with this hut, right?
Papa on the map. So,
So like you can do heights. Ice human. All right. This is a game I'm definitely going to end up putting a lot of time into. Now move the Xbox One controller so I can read the dialogue bar a bit better. One sec, I gotta go. I'll be right back. You alright?
My bed.
Hmm? You stuck? What do you want me to do? I'll move this. Can you get your foot up? Right.
I can't get the door open. I have to be put
Right. Plate, aye. Don't know where I found that plate. No, that was mine. I was in here all those hours. What? Shoes. Shoes. Alright.
See that light that's in the kitchen?
Yeah.
If you bring it through and I'll get you to light that candle. You get the smell of cooking that through. Somebody seeing it at the door. See that new candle that needs that stuff on it. It's that would cause a fire. What's that thing to fuel? And I thought he would be able to sell it.
What a grim thing to say when you've been in hospital.
Have you got the new wet up in it? That would be good for him. Because it's what happens if that's it.
Oh, just a wee bit, yeah.
Well, nice. That's the first starts the fucking. I'll keep that up. Here, and then see that shampoo thing.
How do you work it? Do you just do that? I think I've gotten used to the smell. I think I got used to the smell. See, because the dogs have done it that many times. See, because the dogs have done it that many times the last couple of days, I've gotten used to the smell. I've stopped noticing. There we go. Yeah. No, no. I'm fine.
That other thing is up right out. Suck the water back in.
Ah. There we go. Root. Root. Oh, well, I've sprayed it with all the drugs up there. I'll spray it in the bathroom so it doesn't smell in there.
That carpet and the one in the sitting room, was that beside the washing machine, that carpet?
On top of the table.
Sitting room.
On top of the table.
You've got a joke.
It was on top of the table. It was in the dining room table.
Well, at least in the washing machine, and that bathroom now as well. That one that's in the foyer.
Aye. Right, we're back. We can continue. But essentially, it's just doing like dual type fight kind of stuff. Damn. Sick. Yeah, we're going to do this for a bit longer. Well, not too much longer. I'm dead. And look, the game's making a big deal about it. That's not fun. I thought I'd accidentally spawned back in my apartment. I thought I'd have to do all that travelling work again. Offering me a rematch. Right. So what I'm trying to do is you have to get to the very bit of the underworld. And so far I've tried going in this bar, but you don't really achieve much. I've tried talking to all the people in it. That's also not got me too far. Like, this is one of those games. I don't often find myself looking up. There's a way out in here. Is it in here? I'm not often the type to find myself looking up like playthroughs and stuff, but with this game, the chances of me doing that are becoming more and more likely. Right, so where else can we go? Those screens cannot be interacted with. That's the room that sells all the droid stuff. This stream will be ending very soon, though. I'm going to make the shorts and then Bob will just sit and chill and play some other games. This is a guy where you can get healed. Thank you. What's over behind this door? Oh, here we go. Oh, here we go. He's throwing accusations around. Yeah, let's threaten this person. No, because threatening's better than asking nicely. That's what this game's taught me. Yeah, it's not really granted us any missions. Anyway, I was gonna go for quite a bit longer, but I've opted. Apparently, I've opted to drop my audience in a very new way. And he is right, it is quite late in the UK. I am going to sit and just like FaceTime some friends and do some video games and stuff. But I want to thank everyone who's joined. Live streams tomorrow, or at least try and get 2 of them. I want to be like really productive. Oh, excuse me, but I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you very... Got some gas. Thank you very much for watching. Plus, we've got the 2 hours I wanted.